What's the tea? Welcome everyone to Trust and Trade, your weekly glimpse into hot topics in the world of antitrust and consumer protection.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Trust and Trade, the ABA podcast that gives a glimpse into hot topics of antitrust and consumer protection. This episode actually serves a dual purpose and is the latest installment in the State Enforcement Committee's State Enforcer You Need to Know series, which profiles state antitrust and consumer protection enforcers and seeks to introduce them and the work that they do to the ABA. So my name is Kelsey Paine. I'm a vice chair for the ABA State Enforcement Committee. I've been an assistant attorney general in the antitrust division for the Texas Attorney General's office for almost 3 years now. Today, we're going to be speaking with Elinor Hoffmann. She is the chief of the Antitrust Bureau for the Office of New York Attorney General. So we're very excited to have Elinor here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
So I'd like to start out with a little bit of your background. How did you get into antitrust and what do you like about it?
So I got into antitrust by serendipity. I got an offer from a large firm in my third year of law school. I decided to take it. Like many other people, I had some financial considerations, and I thought I'd stay there for 4 years. It turned into 25. But the reason I joined the antitrust group there, and there was a separate antitrust group, is a friend of mine who had joined that firm a year before said, come do antitrust. It has great social, political, and economic implications. And that sounded really interesting, actually. And they did both counseling and litigation. And so I said, and he said, and you'll work with fantastic people. And all of that turned out to be 100% true. I should add, I had never taken an antitrust course. My econ background was limited to one course in macroeconomics in undergrad. And so I don't know whether I would hire me today to do antitrust, but I was hired. I joined the group and I've never looked back. I've been so fortunate to practice in this area. And you asked what I like about it. Antitrust is constantly evolving. There are no clear answers. Everything is analysis and intellectually stimulating and a thought process and a lot of judgment calls. It's not like you can open the book and look up some single-spaced reg and it'll give you the answer. That's not antitrust.
It sounds like you had a really great experience at the firm and were there for a while. Why did you decide to make the jump to public sector, and how has your experience differed at the firm versus where you are now?
So I was a partner in one of the large law firms for 16 years. And at some point, the firm started not doing that well, and there wasn't much antitrust work and there wasn't much litigation. And I decided it was time to leave. I didn't really see a future for myself that would be very interesting there. And for a year, I thought I'd do something else. Actually, I took a real estate brokerage course, kind of floated around. I started doing some independent legal counseling. Then I was asked to teach antitrust, and that was exciting. And I really got back into it. And then a former partner of mine said, why don't you interview at the AG's office? She was there by that time. And I did. I just had so much fun for 3 hours talking to everyone there that when they gave me an offer, I joined.
So what could you tell us more about your role in New York now? How long have you been there and what are some of your responsibilities?
Yeah. So I joined about 15 years ago, a little more than 15 years ago. And at the beginning, I was assistant attorney general because our structure is very flat. And then I gradually got different titles until a few years ago, I was made bureau chief. But I've always had pretty significant responsibility, kind of commensurate with my years of experience. And right now, as bureau chief, I supervise about 13 attorneys and about 3 or 4 staff people. We actually work pretty closely with my next level of management, the head of the Economic Justice Division. And right now we have 17 active investigations or litigations, and that includes 6 active litigations, which is about the most since I joined the office. So we're really busy, and I try and stay on top of it all. Get a lot of help from my deputy chief, Amy McFarlane, who became deputy chief earlier this year. So
also 13 attorneys and a large number of investigations and litigations. That sounds like a lot. Is there one sort of case you feel like the division takes more of, more conduct or more merger, or sort of all over the place, more multi-state or more New York only investigations?
I would say it's between conduct and mergers. It's kind of whatever is happening. There have been a lot of mergers in the last few years, but we're also doing significant conduct cases. In terms of New York State only and multi-state, I would say the last couple of years has leaned more towards multi-state, both, for example, the Facebook litigation, which I think includes almost every state, and the Daraprim litigation, which is 7 states. So it varies. And we have a few New York only investigations going on. We haven't had a significant New York only litigation since New York v. Activists back in 2014.
And you mentioned that you worked on trials and private practice, and you've got 6 ongoing litigations right now. How often do antitrust cases actually get to trial?
As a general matter, not very often. But in our office, we've tried 2 major antitrust cases in the past 6 years, which is a lot for any kind of practice, except maybe the DOJ or FTC. One of those, New York v. Activists, was a monopolization case that New York brought alone in 2014. It was a product hopping case. We got a decision from the district court imposing a preliminary injunction on the defendant, and it was affirmed by the Second Circuit. So it was the first product hopping case to get to an appellate court, and I think we set some precedent there. And then a couple of years ago, we tried the T-Mobile Sprint case. We challenged the merger with, I think, 9 other states ultimately. It was a state-only challenge to a national merger, which made it very significant. Typically, we are in lockstep with DOJ or FTC on these deals. In this case, although we and DOJ agreed that the merger as originally proposed would be anti-competitive, they accepted the parties' arguments that the divestiture plan that the parties brought to them would restore competition. We were far more skeptical, and we didn't believe it would work. So we went to trial. And we lost that case, but I think it was a terrific, terrific case to try.
So would you say with all the cases you've taken to trial, would you say that the T-Mobile one was maybe one of the most important to bring or the most impactful for antitrust or state enforcement, or would you think another one?
No, I think T-Mobile Sprint probably had the most impact. There's really no question that we as states have the legal authority to challenge a merger like that, but we have not done it very frequently. It might have been the first national merger that a state has challenged. And I think it made the antitrust bar and others wake up and say, well, we really have to pay attention to this. The states are capable of challenging a merger like that. They're going to put together the resources that enable them to challenge a merger like that. And so we have to pay attention to state enforcement.
So what is it actually like to try a large antitrust case like this? Do you have any advice for younger attorneys that might be working on their first antitrust litigation?
Well, the first trials that I was involved with were in private practice when I was a young associate. So I did a lot of the backroom work. I negotiated deposition designations and all that stuff. And then when I was a very young partner, I tried 2 significant antitrust cases as co-lead counsel. One was a jury trial, one was a bench trial, and then there have been a couple of others since I joined this office. But I think trials are done by teams. So they're generally not done by one person. There's generally someone there who's going to be the lead person, kind of being the MC or talking to the judge every day. But you need a team to try an antitrust case. You can't have one person do all of the examinations or the opening and the closing and everything else. And it can be a logistical nightmare, I think, not only antitrust trials. So there was a big difference between trying the New York v. Activist case, where we had just us, and trying the T-Mobile Sprint case, where we had the assistance of outside counsel and a big logistics team. So, but for young attorneys, I'd say there's nothing like it. I mean, it's maybe not compatible with life for the 2 weeks or so of trial, and even before that, all the preparation, but it's an experience that you can't duplicate doing anything else.
It sounds like state enforcers might be kind of uniquely qualified then, because we're already used to working in multi-states with large groups of people across different states.
Yeah.
And I know you're preparing to go to trial now. You've got 6 litigations in progress. How has the pandemic sort of changed how you're preparing to go to trial and just litigation process in general?
Well, first of all, it hasn't affected our productivity at all. We've certainly gotten up to speed with all of the technology that you need to collaborate remotely. In terms of trial prep, I don't know how much of a difference it's made. Once we got used to talking to everybody on Zoom and WebEx and Teams, we managed to collaborate quite well. Now that we're getting ready to actually get into the courtroom, we're making plans about logistics and who's going to be using our space. Strangely enough, we have more space for our co-counsel who are coming in from different places in the country, because our office is still pretty much remote. So we have lots of space to put them.
So it sounds like one change at the New York AG's office in general is more remote work. Are there any other sort of lasting changes that you've noticed from the pandemic?
I think we have recognized the importance of technology. And 10 years ago, we would not have had the technology that we needed to do this. I really can't imagine how we would have managed the last 2 years if it had happened a decade ago. But I hope the office will continue to improve, advance, and keep up with modern technology, because it's so important.
So it's also made networking a little bit easier. Are you involved in the ABA or NAG at all? And do you think this is important for antitrust attorneys to be involved in those organizations?
Yeah. So I'm in the leadership in the ABA. I've held various positions as chair, vice chair, and several task forces. And I'm also on the executive committee of the New York State Bar Association Antitrust section. I think it's really important. These organizations are volunteer organizations. If you put in work, you'll get a lot out of it in terms of professional development, meeting other people, being exposed to stuff that goes on all around the country in all sectors of the bar, private, academia, government. It's been a great experience. Early on in my career, I was involved with ABA work a bit, and then it just kind of stopped. I was in a large firm. I had 2 children. I had other things going on in my life. And then when I joined this office, I got re-involved, and it's just been enormously rewarding.
So something that I've noticed, I'm involved in the ABA and then also as a state enforcer. There are so many women in leadership roles across the ABA and just across state enforcement in general, which I think is pretty amazing. But what is it like to work with a group of women? And have you seen this trend change over the number of years that you've been in practice?
Yeah, it's great to work with other women in positions of responsibility. And yes, it's changed over time. So when I started work in a large law firm, there were exactly 3 women ahead of me in a firm of 120 people, which was a large law firm for that time. And that certainly has changed tremendously. I still see in the private bar, the power structure is predominantly male. In government, it's very different. There are a lot of women in state and federal and international antitrust enforcement. The chair of the FTC is a woman. There have been women who have headed the Justice Department's antitrust division, and certainly in the states, I don't know whether it's majority women or there are just a lot of us. And I think we've demonstrated we can hold positions of serious responsibility.
It's been great talking with you and learning more about the work you do in New York and just about your career. I have one last question. I know you gave advice to younger attorneys in litigation settings. Do you have any advice generally, or just anything you'd like people to know if they're going to bring a case in New York, something that they should know?
Let me think. Nothing particularly about bringing a case in New York. Advice generally, if you're looking at employment prospects, I'd really try and figure out the character of the place and make sure that you work with people that you can relate to and learn from. If you're going to a private firm, I think it's really good to find a firm that does both plaintiff and defendant work. That may not always be possible. I had that experience. We didn't do class action work, but we did act as plaintiffs in some antitrust cases, so you see both sides. I would say take advantage of the revolving door that antitrust offers. You can learn stuff in private practice. You can learn stuff in government. It will enhance and enrich your professional life. And then I guess one final bit of advice I'd have is when you feel stressed, and we all do sometimes, there's a lot going on as lawyers handling really important matters. Think about the reasons you have opportunity, you have education, you have people in your lives that you care about and that care about you. And it's not going to change your day-to-day situation. You're still going to be awfully stressed and pulled in a lot of directions, but maybe it'll give you some perspective.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing some of your career advice and some of the work you do with us. It's been really interesting.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Trust and Trade, brought to you as always by the Antitrust Law Section of the American Bar Association. Now you know that's the T.